Hi, I'm Ellen with Madison Max Living. There are literally thousands of articles published every day on how to live more naturally and healthy. It can be really confusing, so you're going to want to stay tuned today for this episode of Madison Max Living as Dr. Patrick Andersen and co-host Stacy Hansen bring you your healthcare news. It's coming up next. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Max Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. We're here today to talk about natural health care news. We've gathered some great natural health care news from around the web to share with you. The one I've got today, Dr. Pat, is from Emax Health, and it's talking about vegan blood, and it sounds a little vampire-ish.
It does, vegan blood.
So sorry.
I wonder if you can buy that.
I'm sure. I don't know. The black market vampires seem to always get these things in the movies. But it says it's 8 times more protective against cancer. So it's talking about specifically a plant-based vegan diet, and it said not a junk food vegan diet, so you want to avoid the simple carbs as always. But people that had that plant-based vegan diet for a year or more, their blood was 8 times stronger, and it was much more protective against stopping cancer cell growth.
There's so much to nutrition. It's becoming out more and more, I think, on that topic.
Especially on those fruits and veggies, so you can't go wrong with eating a lot of those.
Speaking of eating, I have one here about not eating.
This one, the flip side.
This one is why intermittent fasting may be the best diet plan. You may have heard about intermittent fasting. It seems to be the latest thing.
Yeah.
But it's one of the. This is from Men's Fitness, and the principle behind the diet method known as intermittent fasting, unlike many popular diets, intermittent fasting has the backing of scientific research, including a massive 2017 study analysis by the International Society of Sports Nutrition, which suggests that intermittent fasting can be just as effective, if not more, than daily calorie restriction. So the idea is that you don't eat for certain parts of the day. There's really 3 ways to do it. One would be eat 5 or 6 days regularly and take 1 day fasting.
Okay.
And then obviously have water and things like that, and maybe some tea or limited calories. And then another one is to do alternate day fasting. That one would be kind of hard, I think.
Yeah.
Eat 1 day, when you wake up in the morning, let's see, which day is it?
Am I eating today? Yeah.
But there's another way called restricted time feeding, time-restricted feeding, where you would only eat in a 4 to 8 hour window. And the research was really good here that once you do a fast, so if you don't eat anything past, say, 7 at night, and you don't eat till noon or 1 or 2 the next day, I don't think I'd recommend this for kids growing.
Right.
But for many people with digestive issues, the rest for the stomach is really a good idea. And they can have coffee and MCT oil, or some people put that in their coffee, or they'll even put butter in the coffee.
Oh, really?
You can have coffee and tea and water, and that's all part of the fasting procedure. But the medium chain triglyceride oil will help keep your energy up. But what they're finding on this intermittent fasting is you lose more body weight and you maintain your muscle mass.
Oh, really?
Which, because usually you lose like 75% water weight and 25% muscle mass. Or, you don't get and you get better fat burning with intermittent fasting. And it's really shown here to have very few, if any, downfall. If you are diabetic, it's thought to be very helpful for a diabetic because when you eat, insulin goes up. And so if you're not eating, your insulin isn't spiking. And it there's a number of doctors in this article saying that has a real value for diabetics to help them. But of course, discuss that with your doctor about the value of intermittent fasting. I think too, when reading through this, one of the good things is that if you just do it a little bit at a time and see how you do, kind of phase into it. I do intermittent fasting and I just love it.
Yeah. Hey, you've told me that. You said you feel better. You've got a lot more energy.
More energy, lose body fat, and don't maintain the muscle mass. So it's got a lot of good scientific research behind it. So something to look into for the best ways to to get yourself a lower body fat percentage and healthier.
Interesting. So yeah, so maybe to check out for the new year. Well, stay with us. We'll have a lot more great news right after this.
Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv.
Welcome back to Max Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen, sharing some great healthcare news with you today, natural healthcare news, that is. I've got an article here that, well, I was a little bit hesitant to read it because it starts off talking about how lying around at home watching TV isn't always the best way to unwind. But I'd like to add the caveat that that doesn't mean Max Living. It doesn't mean this show. It's always a good idea to watch this show, isn't it, Dr. Pat?
Yeah.
So it gives some ideas. This is from medicinenet.com, ways to truly relax at home. So the first one it says is pretty easy to do. Just simply listen more than you talk.
Probably more relaxing listening than talking.
And the science backs that up. They say that when you really listen to someone, your blood pressure actually goes down. So just sit back and listen to your friend. And just another one up here is just calling up an old friend. It says loneliness is associated with a wide variety of health problems. It can give you high blood pressure, diminished immunity, cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline. So call up that old friend and listen to them. Also suggest just taking an afternoon nap. Doesn't that sound wonderful? So here's your excuse to just do it and to meditate. We always talk about on this show, meditate, meditate, meditate. And there's just so many studies that show that it's so good for you. This new research out of Harvard shows that just 8 weeks of meditating regularly actually shrinks a section of your brain where your stress response is activated. And when that part of your brain has been shrunken, you're actually less likely to respond to stress and even have stress. It doesn't even register. And the last one here is just stop right now and take 3 deep breaths. So everyone has time for that.
You know, I try to get my patients who get up really fast and they never straighten up completely. They just start walking bent over. I try to tell them to stand up straight, lift your sternum, now take a deep breath, and then walk. Give it 1 second to straighten up.
And then
they just laugh because then they realize they're running around bent over
They're
half
already
the time.
going like this. Yeah, then they just defeated the whole purpose of
whenever
going in.
you can, take a couple deep breaths. It's amazingly healthy for you. Well, I've got one here. Kale and other leafy vegetables may make your brain seem 11 years younger.
Wow, so we can look, by watching this show, you can look younger and actually be younger in your brain.
Have your salad while you're watching the show.
Yes.
This is from published in LA Times, but it was originally published in the journal Neurology. So when you look into your salad bowl, do you think that this is a fountain of cognitive youth? We're flowing in there. Would you return every day to have a salad?
Yes.
It's a fountain of youth in that salad bowl for your brain is what they're saying in here. That people who ate 1 serving at least of leafy greens had a slower rate of decline on tests of memory and thinking skills than people who rarely ate salad or vegetables. And after almost 5 years, that combination added into about 11 years of mental decline. So it's that important to get those nutrients in your body. Martha Morris, the senior author of the study, says it's almost unbelievable at Rush University Medical Center in Chicago. Eating these leafy greens was independently associated with slower cognitive decline. That tells you the single food group contains so many nutrients that could be brain protective. So it protects against inflammation, accumulation of toxic proteins such as beta amyloid, and neuronal damage and death.
So we're talking kale, spinach, mostly greens here?
Green leafy
biggest
vegetables.
Green leafy.
Yep, kale, spinach, any salad, and of course the greener the better. So there is no denying that eating vegetables and fruits and salads are extremely powerful as antioxidants and slowing the decline physically, joint health, and mentally, and body fat.
What do they consider a serving for leafy greens usually? Is it a cup? Would you say
About a
is
cup
serving?
it would be a serving, yeah.
And I've been reading too about a lot of people making green juices in the morning and adding some protein powder and some kale and some spinach. So that seems like a great way to get a lot of it in right away.
Right
easily.
away, you bet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I've been thinking about trying it, and maybe you can too. Well, stay with us. We'll have a lot more great ideas right after this.
Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv.
Welcome back to Max Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen, talking natural healthcare news today. And I've got good news for you if you like green tea, but bad news for you if you like coffee. So I might be angering some people out there, but it's especially matcha green tea. They're saying here in eMax Health that it might be better for you than coffee in so many ways. Matcha green tea has got lots of antioxidants, whereas coffee has a lot of acidity, which isn't necessarily very good for you. This one here is a little scary too. Coffee actually has a compound that's actually a carcinogen. So you want to watch that, whereas green tea actually has an ingredient that actually lowers your risk for multiple types of cancer. There was a study that found that when Japanese men drank 5 or more cups of green tea a day, they lowered their risk of prostate cancer by 48%. So that's huge. Also, if we've got to appeal to your vanity, we'll appeal to your vanity, which you sometimes have to do here. Coffee can actually increase your belly fat. That increases the level of the stress hormone cortisol, which can actually lead to an increase in that type of fat, whereas matcha green tea can promote weight loss. Also immunity, coffee decreases your immune function, whereas green tea can boost your immune function. And just plain anxiety, the caffeine in coffee can make you more anxious, whereas matcha green tea has a compound that actually promotes a sense of calm. So you may want to consider switching your morning beverage or your mid-afternoon beverage or whenever you normally drink it.
You know, a good idea is to have a couple of cups of green tea, and matcha green tea is one of the best kinds. You can actually get a really pure form called ceremonial green tea.
Ooh, that sounds nice.
It's called,
You need a fancy teacup for that.
That's a real treat when you have that one. But the idea, coffee has some good benefits to it too. You actually can do a little better on a test if you have it.
Okay.
You know, and
be strategic about when you drink it.
It has some good benefits that way, but maybe a good idea is to just switch from coffee to tea a little sooner. So 1 or 2 cups of coffee, you know, I think, you know, don't worry about it too much. But the acrylamide in baking, roasting the beans is the problem, and in California they were saying that they may have to list that as a potential carcinogen.
Wow.
And so that's some interesting news relative to that. But the green tea can be really beneficial overall, as you said, and recommend just switching sooner to drinking tea. And you can enjoy quite a taste from that as well.
Right, I think the taste is better myself, but I'm probably alone in that. I don't know, maybe not.
Well, you know, there's also a lot of different flavors of tea and a lot of different benefits. You can have your calming teas at night, your a little more stimulating. They've got teas that are for breathe easy tea. It's a whole study and an art of learning all the different teas. You know, I cheat with my Keurig maker. Instead of having a pot, I just put the whole bag right into the Keurig, close it down, and get the tea real fast.
Oh, that's a
with
clever
that.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't microwave. I really try to stay away from the microwave. I think it changes the nature of the water, and it's not as healthy. And that, to some, that may sound like a real crazy idea, but I think if you look into it, that's a lot of energy to put into to water or food, and it may very well denature proteins and change the nature of the food.
Interesting. That's something to consider for sure.
Yeah. Well, I've got one here on canola oil. Is it a bad choice for your brain? It's from Public Health, published in Forbes magazine. And what they're saying is, while the canola oil can be very healthy for your heart in some ways, some will argue that because it's considered low acid Canadian oil. Canadian low acid oil is how it got called canola. But some will argue that it's good for your heart because it's low in trans fats, it's high in unsaturated fats. But what this article says, it's not very good for the brain, and it limits one substance called amyloid beta 140 that's meant to limit 142. And when you have with a canola oil, you get that doesn't function properly, and you end up damaging your brain.
Oh, wow.
So it may be heart healthy potentially, but not the brain. You don't get any of these issues when you use olive oil.
Yeah, seems like you should stick to olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil, the kinds you were always mentioning. Yeah. Well, good news. Great to know a lot of these things here. Well, stay with us. There's more right after this.
Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv.
Welcome back to Max Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. We're here today talking about natural health care news, and I've got another one here for you, Dr. Pat, from the New York Times. Do you feel like you're seeing more of the drug ads on TV?
Or they're just getting more irritating. I'm not sure which.
Not sure which. You're not imagining it. You actually are seeing more. They say here that between 2012 and 2016, the increase in such ads has increased almost 65% in the number of ads that drug ads that you're seeing on TV. So you're not imagining it at all. Another quote here says that a TV ad spending by pharmaceutical companies has more than doubled in the past 4 years. So they're really hitting this hard. And most often you're going to see this on dramas and news shows. They say they're marketing to the 65 and over population that tends to be watching those shows at those times of day. And what I thought was interesting here too is, you know how they're always giving you the list of risks, you know, this, and you may die, you know? They said that hearing about all those risks actually, they found increases consumers' belief in the advertising.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, I suppose they think, well, if they're going to tell me that I might die from their product, then I believe everything else that they're saying, which isn't what you'd expect.
It's counterintuitive, isn't it?
Yeah. So you are seeing more, and they say there's a huge amount of information compressed into a 60-second commercial, more so than you're going to find in ads for any other industry.
It's my understanding that 1/3 of all advertising on every media is for prescription drugs.
Yeah, based on these numbers, I would believe that. So just be aware of that, I guess, as you're watching your shows at night and you're seeing those ads.
Well, I've got one here, 9 reasons you should stop drinking soda. And so this is all doctors, each in their own field, making comments. One, it's Philip Goglia, a nutritionist, said it's very high in sugar. He says the average soda contains 16 teaspoons of sugar, which probably many people realize now that there's a lot of sugar. But the average American consumes 42 gallons per year.
Wow,
and here's the fact that got me. After 6 months, the average daily consumption of sugary drinks will increase the fat deposits in a person's liver by 150% and a direct contributor to diabetes and heart disease.
Wow.
And when it comes to diet soda, in many cases it stimulates unwanted sugar cravings and can actually promote overeating.
So on top of all those, the 150% increase in fat in your liver, you're going to also be overeating and craving sugar. Yeah, that's dangerous.
And it can cause insomnia, the sugar and the caffeine, it makes it harder to sleep. It causes weight gain because especially the diet sodas will stimulate unwanted sugar cravings, Dr. Goglia explains. It can have a negative effect on your bone health. It's because the acidity will draw calcium from your bones to neutralize it in your blood, that phosphoric acid. And the phosphoric acid can also inhibit the absorption of calcium, therefore resulting in loss of calcium from your bone. Here's an interesting one that will appeal to vanity.
Yeah.
When there's bone loss in the face, such as in the mandible, it will affect the cheekbones and make you look older.
So the soda may be making you look older as well as heavier.
It sounds like a stretch, but that's the physiology.
Interesting, yeah.
It leads to tooth decay and stomach issues because the acidity breaking down the enamel. It'll make you break out. Many dermatologists recommend the soda, limiting soda so you don't break out. And then you have that feel good, but then you start to crash. And then it also spikes your blood sugar levels, which cause all kinds of mood changes as that goes crashing as well. It can cause gout. The fructose in high fructose corn syrup used to sweeten the sodas actually raises uric acid levels, which is elevated in gout. And it causes premature aging.
There it is again.
In the American Journal for Public Health found that soda drinkers had shorter telomeres. Telomeres act as protective caps on the end of your chromosomes, and they will keep your cells from shrinking. Telomere length is associated with lifespan, and shorter telomeres are associated with many chronic diseases, heart disease, diabetes, and certain forms of cancer. So don't drink soda.
Yeah, it doesn't make you ever want to touch a soda again. So definitely want to stay away from that. Drink more water today. Stay with us, we'll have more right after this.
Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv.
Thank you so much for joining us today for the natural healthcare news here on Max Living. And as you probably noticed, one of the best things you can do for your body is to have a sound structure and nervous system. And one way you can do that is through chiropractic checkups. I'm actually a patient over at Madsion Max Living, and if you're interested in chatting with Dr. Patrick Andersen, you should give them a call at Madsion Max Living, or be sure to check them out online. Again, this is Madsion Max Living. Thanks for joining us today. You can find us next time right here on Wisconsin's 57.
Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv.